She never knew her bodyguard would become her greatest weakness, and on the day Daniel Cross was assigned to protect her, Amelia Ross believed her life was already complicated enough without another stranger watching her every move. Because Amelia was not just wealthy, she was powerful, the youngest CEO of a fast-rising biotech company in Chicago, a woman who had built her reputation on control, independence, and emotional distance after losing her parents at a young age. And when anonymous threats began appearing in her inbox and office, the board insisted on personal security, a decision she resented deeply, until Daniel walked into her office with quiet confidence, introducing himself in a calm, steady voice that carried neither arrogance nor fear. And from the first moment, Amelia sensed he was different, not impressed by her title, not intimidated by her authority, simply focused, observant, professional, his presence filling the room in a way that made her acutely aware of her surroundings. Daniel explained security measures with precision, outlining routes, schedules, and protocols as if they were second nature, and while Amelia nodded impatiently, her attention kept drifting to the way his eyes scanned the room, missing nothing, the way he stood, slightly angled, always prepared, and despite her irritation, she felt something unfamiliar stir inside her, a sense of safety she had never allowed herself to rely on. Over the next few days, Daniel became a constant part of her routine, escorting her from her penthouse to her office, standing discreetly nearby during meetings, driving her through crowded city streets, and Amelia found herself increasingly aware of his presence, noticing how he anticipated her needs before she voiced them, how he adjusted his pace to match hers, how he positioned himself subtly between her and potential threats without making her feel trapped. And though she told herself this was simply professionalism, it unsettled her how naturally she began to trust him. Amelia prided herself on self-reliance, on never depending on anyone emotionally. Yet late one evening, when a minor security scare forced them to reroute unexpectedly, she felt a spike of fear she had not experienced in years, and Daniel's calm voice, grounding her in that moment, surprised her with how quickly it eased her anxiety. And afterward, when she tried to dismiss the incident, she caught herself replaying his words, his tone, the certainty with which he had taken control. Their conversations remained brief and professional, but in the quiet moments between destinations, Amelia found herself asking questions she normally would not, about his background, his experience, his life before security work. And Daniel answered politely but sparingly, revealing little, and that restraint only deepened her curiosity, because she sensed layers beneath his composed exterior, a past shaped by discipline and loss, strength forged through experience rather than privilege. One night, after a long board meeting that left her drained and frustrated, Amelia lingered in the back seat of the car, staring out at the city lights as Daniel drove in silence, and she found herself speaking aloud, admitting how exhausting it was to carry expectations, to be strong all the time. And though she had not meant to reveal that vulnerability, Daniel did not interrupt or judge. He simply listened, and when he responded, it was not with sympathy, but understanding, acknowledging her pressure without diminishing her strength. And that moment unsettled her more than any threat ever had, because she realized he saw her not as a symbol of power, but as a person. As days passed, the line between employer and protector remained firmly intact, yet something beneath it began to shift, subtle and dangerous, because Amelia started to look for Daniel instinctively in crowded rooms, started to feel uneasy when he stepped away to coordinate security, started to feel calmer simply knowing he was nearby, and she hated herself for it, hated the vulnerability creeping into her carefully controlled world, because weakness was something she could not afford. Daniel, meanwhile, maintained his discipline outwardly, but internally he felt the pull as well, the growing awareness that Amelia was unlike anyone he had protected before, not reckless or naive, but strong in a way that demanded respect, and he struggled to keep his focus on duty, reminding himself repeatedly that attachment was a liability in his line of work, that emotional distance was essential, yet each time he saw the fatigue in her eyes or heard the tension beneath her composed voice, his resolve was tested. The first real crack appeared late one night when a threatening message was delivered directly to Amelia's penthouse, bypassing standard security, and as alarms activated and protocols were set in motion, Daniel escorted her to a secure room, his hand briefly steadying her as adrenaline surged. And in that confined space, with danger still uncertain, Amelia felt fear strip away her defenses, and she admitted quietly that she was scared, not of being hurt, but of losing control, and Daniel's response was immediate and unwavering. unwavering, promising her safety with a conviction that made her chest tighten. In that moment, Amelia realized something she was not ready to confront, that Daniel had become more than a shield against external threats. He had become the one person who could see her vulnerability without exploiting it, the one person whose presence made her feel both exposed and protected. And as she stood there under the low emergency lights, she understood with unsettling clarity that the greatest danger she now faced was not the unseen enemy targeting her life, but the quiet truth forming in her heart, that the man hired to guard her was slowly becoming the one weakness she could not control. And as Chapter 1 closed, Amelia had no idea how deeply that weakness would reshape her future, only that the boundaries she depended on had already begun to blur, and there would be no easy way back.